Today, we're diving into a paper that really, truly changed the game for AI safety. See, Meta's Llama 2 wasn't just about releasing another powerful model. It was about publishing the entire safety cookbook, giving the open source world the exact recipe it needed to catch up to the giants. So, to really get why this was such a huge deal, you have to cast your mind back to early 2023. Large language models were just exploding. Things like ChatGPT were doing stuff that seemed like magic, and it felt like we were seeing a new breakthrough almost every single week. The pace was just wild. But here's the thing, there was a catch. While these models were getting incredibly smart, the secret sauce for making them safe, for aligning them with what we actually want, was a total black box. All the best techniques were locked up inside the big companies building these closed-source AIs. And this created this massive gap in the AI universe. So what did Meta do? Well, they made a really bold move. Instead of just dropping another model, they published a super detailed paper that laid out their entire safety process from start to finish. They basically gave the cookbook away for free. To really appreciate just how significant this was, we've got to talk about this fundamental tension, this huge split that existed in the AI community at the time. So, picture this. On one side, you had the closed models. They were super polished, incredibly well-behaved, and generally safe to use. But how they got that way? Nobody on the outside knew. Then, on the other side, you had all these amazing open-source models. They were powerful, anyone could access them, but they were kind of like the Wild West. They were missing that final, crucial layer of safety tuning. And that divide was seriously holding back progress for everyone. And that brings us right to Meta's solution. See, they didn't just open-source another model. They open-sourced the entire methodology. They showed their work. Okay, this diagram right here is the blueprint. I know, it looks a little complex, but it lays out the entire journey. You start with the raw, pre-trained model over on the left, you go through all this fine-tuning and human feedback in the middle, and you end up with a helpful and safe chat model on the right. This was the playbook the open-source community had been waiting for. We can really break this whole process down into a three-stage recipe. First, you've got pre-training. That's where the model just reads a mind-boggling amount of text from the internet to learn language itself. Then comes supervised fine-tuning, or SFT, which is where you teach it to actually follow instructions. And finally, the real secret sauce, reinforcement learning with human feedback, or RLHF. This is where you train the model kind of like a puppy, giving it rewards for good answers and corrections for bad ones, all based on what human reviewers think. It's this whole feedback loop that really fine-tunes the model's behavior. Now, this process brings us face-to-face with a massive challenge in AI alignment, and that's the constant tug-of-war between being helpful and being safe. To deal with this, the team used something called a reward model. You can just think of it as an AI judge. Its entire job is to look at a chatbot's response and give it a score. A high score acts like a reward, pushing the main model to generate more responses like that one during training. And here is the truly brilliant part. The Llama 2 paper revealed that trying to get a single reward model to judge both helpfulness and safety at the same time was just confusing it. I mean, it makes sense, right? A user asks for instructions on something dangerous. A purely helpful model might just give them, while a purely safe model would refuse. So what did they do? They built two separate judges, one that only cared about helpfulness and another that only cared about safety. This separation was a key innovation that let them manage that tension way more effectively. So this all sounds great on paper, but the million-dollar question is, did this fancy new recipe actually cook up a safer model? Well, Meta put it through its paces. So after all that incredibly complex work, did it actually pay off? The answer? A resounding yes. This chart shows what happened when they tested the models against thousands of adversarial prompts. These are questions designed specifically to try and trick the AI into giving an unsafe answer. And as you can see, lower is better here. The Llama 2 models, those dark blue bars, had a way lower violation rate than their competitors. The proof is right there in the pudding. Now, things do get a little bit trickier in longer back-and-forth conversations. You'll notice that for pretty much every model, that multi-turn bar is higher. The risk just goes up the longer you talk. But even here, in this more difficult scenario, Llama 2 still had a clear lead, which just proved how robust its safety training really was. So let's step back and think about the lasting impact of all this. This was never just about one model. It was about fundamentally changing how the entire AI community thinks about development. And this quote from the paper really captures their whole philosophy.
The authors believed that sharing these powerful tools openly, and crucially, sharing the methods to make them safe, was the absolute best way to speed up progress and make sure everyone had access to this technology, not just a handful of big companies.
But, and this is so important, they were also incredibly honest about the model's limits. They were upfront that its knowledge is stuck in 2022, that it can still make stuff up or show bias, and that it struggles with languages other than English. They even pointed out that it can be too cautious, sometimes refusing perfectly safe requests. That kind of transparency is just a critical part of doing this responsibly. So at the end of the day, the Llama 2 paper handed the open source community a detailed, proven cookbook for AI safety. It leveled the playing field and empowered countless people to build safer AI. But a cookbook is just a guide, right? What happens next? Well, that's up to the chefs. This is for entertainment purposes only.